Today's episode is brought to you by Nature's Menu, the UK and Europe's leading expert in raw and natural pet food. I'm Mel Sainsbury, resident veterinary nurse here at Nature's Menu, and I'll be bringing you all you need to know about looking after your pups. Welcome to the Pupcast. We know that pet parents want the best for their furry friends, but choosing the right food for your pet can often be overwhelming, with so many brands on offer and confusing labelling, making it really unclear exactly what your dog's food is made from. In this special episode of the Pupcast, we're delighted to welcome celebrated chef and presenter of Saturday Kitchen and Food Unwrapped, Mark Tebbutt. Matt attended the esteemed Lees School of Food and Wine before working at some of London's most prestigious restaurants, so he certainly knows a thing or two about the importance of using high-quality ingredients in cooking. As a loving pet owner too, we'll be discussing how you should never settle for anything less than real food for your pets. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And how are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good, just getting ready for Christmas.
Oh, yes, yeah. So we'll dive straight in. Obviously, with your experience and your history within sort of the food industry and things, we sort of wondered how much does using high quality ingredients make a difference to both taste and nutritional value? So in your experience, can you think of any examples that the listeners could identify with through their own cooking at home, maybe for their family?
I mean, essentially, I've always been a big sort of champion of sourcing well and buying the best you possibly can. I mean, if you do that, and you know, I know a lot of chefs sort of bang on about it these days, but back in the kind of the 90s, I used to work under a chef who was all about seasonality, and there's a few simple rules you follow really if you want the best food. Is buy it in season, buy it as close to you as possible, and buy the best quality stuff you can afford. If you shop well and you buy the best quality things you can afford, then you don't have to do a lot to it, and it will always taste better than anything else you can get your hands on.
Oh, it sounds good. We did some research at Nature's Menu, and interestingly, 53% of dog owners believe that the quality of the pet's diet is the most important factor when it comes to the dog looking and feeling its best. Do you think this can relate to human diets in any way?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you don't have to be a doctor to realize that makes sense. If you put in good things in your body, it's going to have a good effect on you. If you're just continually eating junk food and processed food and things like that, that's not going to be good for you. And in the same way as, you know, if you gave your pets sort of second-rate food, they're not going to be at their peak form, are they? So, I mean, that just stands to reason.
Yeah, 100%. I think there was a bit of research that went on a few years ago, I think, wasn't there, where a guy, he ate McDonald's every day for a month or something, and almost killed himself, I think, didn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, why anyone would think that it wouldn't have a bearing on how you behave, how you think, how you react. I mean, all these things, they all lead to us sort of, you know, living better lives, living healthier lives, and enjoying life more. And why wouldn't that translate down to your pets?
Yeah, definitely. And funnily enough, you're saying it translating down to pets. We found through the research that almost 70% of dog owners say that they look after their dogs better than themselves, which is quite surprising, really. But I can kind of relate to it as well. Yeah. So a third of our respondents also admitted that their dog eats better than them. Again, something I can probably identify with.
Yeah.
So what pets do you have, and what's your approach to choosing the right food for your pets?
I've got 2 cats currently. I grew up with dogs. And I have to say, I mean, when I was a kid, you know, we had a dog that used to basically it was a bit free range, and it used to live outside. And what a dog ate in those days is very different to what dogs eat now. I mean, they were almost left to fend for themselves, and it wasn't the kind of the nurturing that goes on these days. You know, fast forward to these couple of cats I've got. They're just brilliant. They're great, and I love them. And it's really important, the stuff you buy them. And then the other thing I've started to do is to change their diet. And they seem to like that. I mean, you know, why would we eat the same thing day in, day out and still be excited about it? You know, you can see them coming in and they're hungry and they wolf things down. But then you can see that sometimes they turn up and they just look bored of the food. So I've started to kind of to swap things in and out and change things a little. Now, whether I'm making a rob from my own back there, I'm not sure. And maybe I'm creating really fussy cats. But fact is, I mean, they look good, they look healthy, they seem quite happy, and they keep coming back. So, I mean, that's always a good sign.
Always a good sign.
They haven't cleared off to a neighbour's house, so they're all right.
No,
I love cats because they're so uncompromising and they don't care.
Exactly. I think if a cat doesn't like you, you pretty much know, don't you?
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, dogs are slightly different. They're more dependent and they're more needy. Cats, no, they don't give a monkeys.
No, we don't need you. We can survive on our own. No, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting actually that you vary your cat's diet, because so many people, especially my work in practice years ago, and we were programmed to tell customers that they shouldn't change their pet's diet. They should stick to the same thing day in, day out. And now I just think, why would you do that? Well, exactly like you've just said, why would you want to eat the same thing day in, day out? It must be so boring. Yeah. And then I think also, like you say, you're making trouble for yourself, because on that day where the dog maybe does nick a bit of bacon off the plate, or somebody does drop a hula hoop on the floor and the dog eats it, if that's the most different thing it's ever had in 6 years of living on the planet, then of course it's going to upset its tummy. You don't know what's going to happen. So,
I mean, the thing we haven't spoke about is the fact that they're part of the bloody family, aren't they?
Yeah,
so why would you not treat them any differently than you would your own kids? That's the kind of my sort of thinking. You want them around, you want that unconditional love, as it were. So why do you then give them a sort of substandard diet?
Yeah, definitely. And having sort of a dry biscuit food every single day, to me, must be like having 2 slices of toast, and maybe sometimes you'll put a different topping on it. Most days you'll just have butter, but some days you might treat yourself and have a bit of Marmite as a different flavour. And to me, that must be what it's like eating dry biscuits every single day. Sometimes it tastes a little bit different, but most times it's just dry old cardboard.
Nature's Menu is dedicated to the health and well-being of its pets and yours. Discover the world of raw and more by visiting naturesmenu.co.uk. The Pupcast podcast is offering an exclusive 20% discount to its listeners. Simply enter Pupcast20 at the naturesmenu.co.uk checkout.
We get asked an awful lot of questions at Nature's Menu about preservatives and exactly what's in the food. Do you think people ask the same of their own diets? I mean, I don't know anybody that works at a large supermarket, but I wonder whether they get the same sort of questions on their own products about preservatives and potential bad things that could be in these things they're buying.
No, I honestly don't think they do. I think in the human world, it's a very niche. I mean, it's expanding one, but I think it's a very niche thing to actually want to know what's in your food, where it comes from, things like preservatives, additives, and all the things that are in there, whether you know they're in there or not. I mean, I've been involved in the food world for sort of nearly 30 years now, and there's still things that jump out at me in supermarkets. You go, do you know what? I've never considered that. I've never thought that. I mean, you mentioned at the top of the show, I've been involved in a show called Food Unwrapped for a long time. And it draws your attention to all these different foods that you take for granted. And I think, and that's the thing with people, you go to supermarkets and you pick up your sliced ham, you pick up your processed cheese, whatever it might be, your ready meal, and you just take it for granted that it's always there. And the reason it's there is because it has to go through a very rapid process to get to those shelves. So many things within the food world that we take for granted and that we don't fully understand what's involved and what's in them.
100%. I think it's convenience, isn't it? You grab it off the shelf,
Absolutely.
chuck it in your trolley. You don't really have time to think about it. You just pay for it and off you pop. But yeah. And then when you're at home and you're sat with your phone on the sofa with a nice cup of tea in hand, and you suddenly think, oh, I wonder what's actually in, I don't know, Rover's food. What's he eating? And then you start delving into it a bit more. But yeah, I remember a few years back, I can't remember if it was a TV show or something that I was reading, but there was a question about why a certain, I think it was a vegetarian curry or something, but it wasn't labelled suitable for vegetarians. And when it was questioned, it turned out it was a dye that was used from crushing beetle shells or something really, really random. And you just think, nobody's asking these questions. Nobody's going to the till at their local supermarket and saying, well, can you actually tell me what this preservative is exactly made of, please?
No, exactly. I mean that reminds me of a story we did on the show many years ago, and it was, what is the wax on lemons? And the wax on lemons turns out to be shellac, you know, the stuff that goes into nail varnish and things like that.
Wow.
Which actually, it comes from these tiny beetles, which are scraped from a tree, and then they're processed, and then they create shellac, which then goes into forming that wax that you have on your lemons, which preserves them. And we all like, because it keeps the lemons looking good and looking fresh for an extra week or so. So yeah, there are so many sort of hidden things. I don't want to say nasties, because that's changed a lot. I mean, it's not the 70s anymore. You can't just put fillers in food to pad it out. I mean, the worst they can sort of pump it with these days is generally water. But very often there are things within your food that you have no idea about. And I would have always sort of assumed that was the same for pet food as well.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think if you're an honest company, you want the best for them. I think, and like you say, I think the process is so much more rigorous now. Anything that goes into pet food is checked and double checked and made sure it's safe and researched, and then it's reapproved every so many months. And there's a very rigorous process that goes through it. So yeah, it does astound me that people question their pet food so much, yet their own food, if you went around their house and opened their fridge, I think we'd be shocked at what we might find. I mean,
I think it's probably similar to people and kids. I mean, very often I can see the food that they try and feed their kids is great, and they're trying to be healthy and what have you. When it comes to themselves, it's like, oh, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And so they kind of fall back on those kind of the run-of-the-mill ready meals and stuff like that, because it's quick, because all the time and energy has gone into their kids. And I think very often you could see that with pets. Because, you know, very often the pets are loved more than either we like ourselves or we like our partners.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely can identify with that. So as we sort of, as we mentioned, with labeling and honesty and transparency, etc., using high quality ingredients. So if we are choosing either pet food or even food for ourselves, what would you suggest we sort of look for in labeling? Is there anything that should send the red flags up, or should we just sort of accept that everything's tested, or how should we approach that, do you think?
On a very basic level, I'd say the less number of ingredients you've got on the back of a packet, generally the better. I mean, I used to work with this Italian guy, and he put it very succinctly, and it's something that always sort of stuck with me. And it was like, if you pick an apple from a tree, it's at its very best. As soon as you put that apple through a process and you take it to a factory, you cut it up, you're losing something. If you then put that apple into a pie, you're losing more. And if you turn that apple into something else, you're getting a fraction of what the original kind of, you know, qualities were. So, and that's the same with all food. As soon as you start sort of pushing them through processes, trying to turn them into something else, I think it changes. We need to look at labels more generally. We need to look at the number of ingredients, the types of ingredients. We need to look at the percentage of, you know, if it's a meat product, how much percentage is in there. I mean, we're all very, you know, we all love baking these days because of Bake Off. And so we all know the percentage of chocolate. I mean, you're going to stop most people in the street and they'll tell you, oh yeah, 70%. But I bet you couldn't tell you what the percentage of a standard meat pie is, or something like that, because we're just not in tune with that sort of thing. So I think when you look at food, you look at the simplicity of the ingredients, the quality. I mean, if they start flagging up scientific names and sort of all sorts of funny numbers that we're not familiar with, then it's a bit like, okay, maybe we should revisit this.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like you say, the less processing, ideally, the better, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terms.
Nature's Menu is dedicated to the health and well-being of its pets and yours. Discover the world of raw and more by visiting naturesmenu.co.uk. The Pupcast podcast is offering an exclusive 20% discount to its listeners. Simply enter Pupcast20 at the naturesmenu.co.uk checkout.
So lastly, within our research, we did see that 47% of pet parents do sort their dogs' meals before their own. What do you think is the easiest way for busy owners to ensure their pets are fed healthy, fresh and balanced food? Because obviously it is convenient to grab a bag of dry food, or it is convenient to pop open a can or a pouch and whack it on a bowl and just chuck it on the floor and let the dog get on with it, or the cat get on with it. So how do you think people can make sure they're getting the best food for their pets?
Is having it as part of the programmed day, isn't it? I mean, I come down in the morning and I get leapt on by two cats who are desperate for food, so they get the food first before. I mean, I've only got my son's at home still. He's still in school, so I'll sort them out before I'll sort him out. And then when he's sorted, I'll sort myself out. So that's generally the way it goes.
It's nice to know that our pecking orders are similar. So you always come right at the bottom of that pecking order and sort everybody else out first in the
basically,
house, including all the animals. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. So anything else you want to have a chat about whilst we've got you, Matt? Because I know you're a special guest. This is a special episode of the Pupcast. So anything else you want to chat about before we let you go?
Well, I mean, during my time on Food Unwrapped, going around various factories and farms and processing plants and what have you, there's been a few eye-openers where I saw slabs and slabs of fresh salmon. Very often you question it and you go, is that just for me? Is that just for the cameras? And it's not. And the reason I found out was because there was all this salmon in this factory, because it was an order that was destined for a catering company for humans. And it was knocked back because the order was cancelled, because the function had been cancelled, and therefore there's pallets and pallets of salmon which would be going to waste. So instead of going to waste or instead of going to landfill, it ends up in pet food. And I was amazed at the quality of these ingredients. And then the veg came in, and the quality of the veg looked better than a lot of market stall veg. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised about the quality of this food and the raw ingredients that goes into making pet food, because you associate pet food on the whole with maybe, some of those kind of run-of-the-mill pie factories that I've also visited that people eat, and you go, oh, I'm not sure I'd eat that. But this was far and above better than any of those factories that I visited. And also, I mean, we looked at the raw element, because I know this is a relatively new thing, that people are going for raw pet food. I think there has to be something in it, personally. We're talking about processing. The less you do to a product, presumably the better it is for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I can 100% identify with you on that, because I think it's all about, like you say, non-processing, keeping it as natural as you possibly can. I mean, these dogs and cats aren't designed to be eating burgers and chips every day, or standing in the wilderness cooking up a nice fry up for themselves. They are designed to catch and eat raw meat and raw prey. So yeah, and definitely the factory aspect, as you say, I've visited quite a few pet food factories in my time at Nature's Menu, and it is quite shocking to see a lot of the time these, in inverted commas, chunks of meat in jelly or chunks of meat in gravy, those sorts of things. And when you actually see them, or when you break them down in your fingers, and they are just a paste, because it's so many different types of meat that are all formed together like toothpaste and chopped up into chunks.
Oh, is that right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, and it's and we all fall for it. We all open a packet and go, God, that looks nice, or that smells wonderful. Look at the size of those peas in that food. And you kind of, then when you actually sit down and think about it, you think, that can't be right. I can't have meat that's the same shape in every single packet that I ever buy. It's just not right.
Well, that's exactly the same as many factories I visited. I went to China to do a show, and we went to a factory where 3,000 pigs were processed a day. And they were turned, on that day, they chose whether to turn them into pieces of meat or sausages. So, and the sausages went from about an inch long to about a 3 foot long. So they're all different shapes and sizes. And you look at it and you go, of course it's uniformed. It might taste quite nice, but of course it's uniformed because of the process it goes through. And that's now, made it clear that that's what happens in general run-of-the-mill pet food as well. I mean, it's exactly the same process. But then, if we want to go to the supermarket and pick up pet food, it has to be there for a reason. It has to be quick to be on the shelves. Now, what's lovely is the fact that we've now got a choice whether we choose that or whether we choose something slightly elevated.
Yeah, definitely. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that after 7 years at Nature's Menu, I'm still blown away when I go to the factory and I walk through and I see the deliveries and the pallets of fresh meat that come in, and the massive, huge bags of blueberries that are taller than me, and all the carrots that are there. And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. The quality of them, you just imagine, for some reason, you think pet food, it's going to be just a mushy mess and it's all going to be pretty horrible. But it's lovely. It's actually really pleasurable walking through and seeing all the tall pallets and bags of fresh ingredients that we have, and knowing that that's what I feed my dogs every day. It's really reassuring to see all that there.
And there's also, I mean, I'm just thinking back to factories. The also sort of telltale sign of the quality of what goes into the food is the smell of the factory. And I visited a very famous meat pie factory in Argentina. And it was possibly the worst smell I've ever witnessed. It was like a meat sauna, and it was not pleasant at all. And then you go to pet food factories, and you don't have that. Or the high-end pet food factories, you don't have that smell. It smells clean. It smells fresh. It smells like a kitchen.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I think until you actually see it for yourself, you don't consider it in that way, do you? It's until somebody sits you down and makes you think about it that you actually realise what actually goes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks ever so much for joining us, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this special episode of the Pupcast. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. Have you got any big plans at all? I can imagine Christmas dinner at your house is incredible. So are you in charge of all the cooking this year?
I'm going to be doing quite a lot of it. And then we have family over for parties to use up everything afterwards. And then I make there's big sort of leftovers, and then I make something else, and then we're left over with more. It's a continual kind of eating fest at Christmas, really. But it's always nice and it's always good fun. But I'm always slightly excited that January comes and we can all calm down, and then eventually I can get out and have a really good Chinese, which is one thing I miss over Christmas. But I suppose going into Christmas, New Year, I mean, we all overindulge. I suspect that drips into having pets because there's more family around. People are slightly more relaxed about what they give their animals. Scraps off plates, stuff like that. It's all time for a sort of overindulgence. Maybe in January when, things calm down and we kind of take stock and look at where we're going in life. And so we need to cut down on drinking, and we won't eat this and we won't eat that. Then that's a good time to get people in, if they're thinking about sort of changing their pets' diets and they're kind of ramping it up to being sort of generally a better diet. That's the time to be looking at it, I think. If we're looking at ourselves, why wouldn't you look at your pet's diet as well?
Definitely. I think we do it consciously or subconsciously, don't we? We all have a bit of clean eating during January. So yeah, why not include your pets in that plan as well? And
yeah, absolutely.
Start having a look at what you're actually feeding your pets every day. Good idea. Good idea. So if you enjoyed our episode, please do leave a rating and a review and let us know if there are any subjects you'd like us to cover in future episodes. And once again, thanks ever so much for joining us, Matt. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks very much.
Nature's Menu is dedicated to the health and well-being of its pets and yours. Discover the world of raw and more by visiting naturesmenu.co.uk. The Pupcast podcast is offering an exclusive 20% discount to its listeners. Simply enter Pupcast20 at the naturesmenu.co.uk checkout.